Hey guys, welcome back to the Rockford Ordnance, and we're coming to you live and mobile from the Rockford Ordnance Command Post, mobile command post. It's like a SWAT wagon, you know. But welcome back to uh, Koffee and Kalashnikovs for July 25th, 2023. Yes, the world is still crazy, but hopefully we bring a little sanity to it and give you a little break from some of the craziness out there. Um, Anyhow, how's everybody doing? Who's here tonight? She did it to me again. Hey, dog. Unreal. She left me the crying dog. Guys, one sec. Hold on. Come on. You're going outside. Go on. Outside. Go. Come on. All right. Sorry about that, guys. But I'm not going to deal with the crying chihuahua again this week. Ay. If it can go wrong, it'll go wrong. Anyhow, welcome back. So I don't know if a lot of you guys got to take a look at the thumbnail, but I thought we would kind of do a show for maybe some of the new folks that might pop in here. Kind of a what to look for when you're out buying your first AK. For those of you that have, maybe are into it, have been into it for a while, have moved on to your second, third, fourth 8K variant, maybe this is old news, but there's a lot of people out there that, maybe they've been into ARs and they've got pistols, shotguns, what have you. And they see on, hey, it looks like an AK. Look, it's got that wood or it's got polymer. And to them, an AK is an AK. They don't know if it's an AKM. They don't know if it's a 100 series. They don't know if it's a Yugo. They don't know if it's American made. They don't know what it is, right? All they know is kind of looks like one, and that's about it. So as we all know, you can walk in a store and pick something up and you might get lucky. It might be of good quality and sound manufacturing processes, or you could pick up a lemon. Now, the days of, picking up something that is total junk is kind of past us. Thank God. I mean, people like Rob Ski, I can credit him for getting rid of a lot of the junk that was out there in the market. It wasn't until his 5,000 round tests and really working these rifles out and calling manufacturers out on the carpet for their processes and their parts, did we see quality stuff coming into the United States. So when we step back, I've talked about it quite a bit. I was in that position once, and I got back into it through Mosin Nagants, and then I thought, I kind of like Russian guns. And lo and behold, I walk in a local gun shop, and there's these AKs, and wow, look at that. That one over there looks used. What is it? Well, it turned out to be a Wasser. For new guys coming in, Wassers didn't always look like they look today. They looked like they'd been across a battlefield, but they were new guns built on parts kits, old parts in some cases, new parts in others. There was a Yugo, and I didn't know that a Yugo was any different than an AKM pattern like a Wasser. I had no clue. So you buy that, and I want to put that new tactical cool foregrip on it or something, and it doesn't fit. How come? And maybe back then you were one of the unlucky ones that picked up an AK and went, wow, this thing's cool, and you bought it for the same price as home, only to find out it said IO on the side. And for those of you that were unlucky enough to be around in those days when IO was around, well, hopefully none of you got caught in that trap. They were just absolute junk. There were some manufacturers back then that, well, there's still a lot of manufacturers out there today, not necessarily of AKs, but there's people out there that kind of look at their product maybe as, what's the average owner going to do with it? They're going to buy the gun. They're going to buy 2 boxes of ammo when they pick up the gun. They're going to take it home. They're going to shoot half box of that 2 boxes, put it in the case, lean it in the closet. The other 2 box and a half of ammo goes in the nightstand, and they don't shoot it for another 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. Maybe they shoot it once a year. And for that type of shooter, well, some of those less than quality firearms may seem just fine. Those are the guys you see when somebody's bashing on something. You say, well, I've had one for 10 years and it's been fine. It's been great. Never missed a beat. Well, they've got, 50 rounds through it, or 80 rounds or 100 rounds over, 6 years. And sure, would it hold up to that? I would hope so. Although over the years, we've seen some fail even faster. When it came to the AK platform, or when it comes to the AK platform, the problems that arose, you could put into a nutshell. It was either problems with manufacturing, because a lot of the people that were importing them, building them from kits, or even trying to their own stuff, just didn't know how. The process here had not been perfected. Everybody kind of thought, well, how hard could it be? These were guns manufactured so that peasants could pick one up and operate it, and they're throwaway. And yeah, they just stamp them out of steel and throw a few rivets in it and send it down the road. They run no matter what. Well, we quickly found that wasn't the case. We didn't have the technologies. We just didn't have the knowledge of the nuances of some of these processes. And a lot of it came down to how much to sloppily, that kind of thing. And the mags wobbled. And if they went fore and aft, well, it might not pick up a round, or what have you. Ton of things, right? But all came down to metallurgy and some sloppy manufacturing in some cases. But like I said, people like Rob Ski kind of drove those people out. When you put them to the test and you show people what they can and cannot do, well, it does a couple things. Either they step up to the plate and make a better product, or they ride off into the sunset or go down in a ball of flames, right? Couple manufacturers that come to mind that stepped up to the plate, and I shouldn't say stepped up to the plate, because they were kind of always there. It just got better. Zastava comes to mind, and you know what? No matter what platform or manufacturer I bring up, there's going to be fanboys and there's going to be haters. So somebody's going to come up and say, well, Zastava had its fair share of receivers cracking, and Zastava had, what was the other stuff I heard? Was it a gas block problem or some stuff? I don't know. Look at the Sam 5, there's people out there, including myself, that had some problems, and others that say, hey, it's just great. It happens. But for the most part, they've driven out the bad, to the point where if you walk in a local shop, you can pretty much be guaranteed that anything you're going to pick up, if you didn't know anything, or you had 5 variants on the wall and you threw a dart, chances are you're going to get a pretty solid rifle no matter what you pick up. Let's talk about what to look for specifically when it comes to components. And even that, the field is tightened down. It's uh, the U.S. market is a strange thing. There's Russian AKs out there built in the factory that had a cast rear trunnion. Well, mention the word casting around anybody in the AK community, and they break out their crosses and their garlic, and oh no, cast trunnions. Well, Russian AKs, some of them have cast rear trunnions, and they work just fine. Let's face it, there's not a lot of pressure put on a rear trunnion, right? In other cases, front trunnion, sure, you want a forged trunnion. You want a quality barrel. Chrome lining preferred, but no, not really necessary, right? I've shot many AKs without chrome line barrels for I can't even I quit counting rounds because it got ridiculous, and a couple were so high nobody believed me, so it's like why bother? But just say that it's a lot, and I proved that it's not that big a deal. Was it a bigger deal back in the day when there was a lot of corrosive surplus ammo? Sure. You could end up with a lot of rust and stuff like that. And chrome line barrels could prevent a lot of that. And even if you cleaned them well, AKs, gas goes everywhere. The receiver fills with gas. Between the sight block and barrel, you get a ton of gook in there. And if it's corrosive and you don't clean it, well, you're going to take it apart one day and find out what corrosive ammo is all about. But when it comes to components, the big no-no has, at least in the U.S. market, and I'd venture to say outside of this market, that a firearm, for the most part, I'm not going to talk about battlefield pickup type rifles, where you want that look, but for the most part, the U.S. consumer, when it comes to firearms, wants something perfect and pretty and nice furniture and all. They're not used to a gun put together in a military factory with maybe a parkerized finish that's got a few scuffs on it, or furniture that came out of a crate and was put on. Militaries don't care about that. It's a tool. It's there to do one thing. It doesn't necessarily have to look pretty. When something breaks, it gets re-arsenaled and they upgrade it. The armor switches some parts and it goes back out. Hence why, Russian AKs and a lot of other AKs were painted. They would put a parkerized type finish on it and shoot paint over it because that holds paint really well, that particular finish. And when it got scratched, they threw another coat of paint on it. It was a good way to seal the metal, to keep bad things away from it. And when it wore, you could slap some more on. Not a big deal. But the U.S. market, we were used to, things like beautiful Colt revolvers that bore the name of a certain breed of snake, things like that, nice bluing and finely finished walnut and all that. And that's just not the case in most AKs built in a military plant or armory that supplies militaries and armies around the world. So a lot of these companies changed just for the U.S. market. Over the years, they found what sold, essentially. Cougar was one of them. They found out real quick that, hey, Americans like a better looking wood, and they kind of mind the scuffs and stuff like that. They don't like them. So while you'll still see Wassers come through, 15, 20 years ago, right after the band sunsetted, stuff like that. So, they've changed just for our market. I don't know if the stuff going out to different militaries, maybe they don't treat it as nice, but usually when there's a manufacturing line, it's kind of makes sense for all. Um, unless you're contenting something like not having a feature for cost savings or something, little stuff, they just kind of run it all. So I don't know, if they're done the same, but I would suspect they are. But yeah, anything you can go in a shop and buy now, at least on the primary market, and there's not a ton left, frankly, is a pretty good bet. Now, if you walk in a pawn shop or a gun shop and you're looking at the secondary market, aka used rifles, well, you might come across one of those, let's just say, less than stellar performers. You may come across an old IO, although I'll tell you this, I visit a lot of FFLs, and if I'm in another town, I'll actively search out pawn shops, or if I see a gun shop, maybe I'll hang a quick UB and see if I can't run in and see what they got. So I'm in shops a lot, and let's face it, there's new stuff on the market. We've pretty much seen it all. So I'm always, kind of hunting through the used racks and trying to see what's behind the counter at a local pawn shop, or even one down in, I don't know, Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, whatever. And I don't see that many of those questionable rifles even show their faces. I think I've come across one or two IOs, various. I'll come across more Century stuff, and let's talk about some of the U.S. manufacturers out there. And frankly, that's why I tend to tell people to buy imports first, because frankly, your odds of getting a bad uh, import rifle, whether it's something that's made in a military factory or something made for the commercial market by those factories, is pretty slim. The problems you find were with maybe importers that were kind of doing their own thing. Century is the one that always comes to mind, and in a lot of ways they deserve the grief they got over the years, but they've gotten better. And then there's Palmetto State. I remember when they were coming out with their first version, there was all kinds of doubt. They're not going to get it right. And there were some issues, and hence Gen 1, 2, 3, 4, FN barrels, this barrel, that. There's not anything bad today. I mean, they finally figured it out. They got secret sauce, and they've updated the trunnions, and they've got the right barrels and the riveting down and the heat treating down. And while I haven't shot many of them, I did have a chance to shoot one that belongs to 2A EDU, and God, it was a pretty rifle. I mean, it really was. There's some other manufacturers out there. Who was it that was making the AK Guy rifle? Damn it. 2 letters. I can't remember. Anyhow, I got to shoot one of those, and it was beautiful. Absolutely beautifully finished and done well. Today is pretty much good to go, with rare exception. There was a time too, Pioneer, stuff they were bringing in was very questionable. You wanted to stay away from it. But let's talk about Century. What's their big rifle now is the Visca, right? And if you go on Century's site and you read all about the tool steel, and they even mention made of the same stuff that jackhammer bits are made from. Um, uh, the chromoly barrels and the carburization and all this other stuff. Yeah, I haven't heard many bad things about them. They've got it down. Even, Century was notorious for having wobbly, loose mag wells on Wassers they brought in, because when they bring in even guns built, in a military factory, or one that supplies the military, they came in single stack and they had to open them up. Well, it's not hard to do. Um, it was either maybe the help they were hiring, or maybe they weren't using jigs, or they just hadn't figured it out quite yet. But all it took was a slip with the old Dremel, and they used to call them Century monkeys, the guys that worked there. And just a slip of the Dremel, and the magwell was too wide or too long or what have you. Or you'd see real rough edges and stuff like that. And you're just not seeing it anymore. They've tightened things up. And tell you the truth, everything I've seen coming out of there is pretty darn good. Back in the days of the C-39 and what was the other one? There was a milled receiver gun and a stamped receiver gun that came out with a completely made in the USA. And then there was a video done where the headspace changed almost immediately, and one where they could push the barrel pin out almost by hand or with just a couple light taps. And everyone went, oh, geez, here we go again. More problems, But you haven't heard much out of them, And when you look, if you come across a Century gun, whether it's new or used, if it's new, you can pretty much guarantee you'll be okay. May not be my first choice, but it'll do for a first gun. Now you come across an old GP Wasser or something like that, and maybe the magwell's loose, or maybe the sight block is crooked, or the front sight is crooked, stuff like that. You don't even see too many crooked sight blocks anymore. You do come across them now and then. It happens. I had one happen to me on an arsenal, but I have never ever bought a rifle that I couldn't get zeroed. Now, I am pretty picky when it comes to that. If I have to adjust a front AK sight and it's off a little between the ears, I hate it. It just, the sight picture bothers me. Not to mention, if you're too close to one side or the other, it kind of throws off everything, to me at least. Maybe in others it's fine, and frankly it's within spec, military spec. If you can get it on paper and zeroed using by adjusting the front sight, and you have enough travel one way or the other, it's good to go. So it's not considered an issue. But I always look to make sure things are straight. There's a couple ways you can do that. I mean, you all scientific about it and get out your square and a piece of granite or something, or glass, and set it on the magwell, and then see how things are lined up and all of that stuff. But just a good straight look down the barrel, hold the gun up, and not necessarily looking down the sights, but looking from above. Make sure everything's, lined up from the rear sight block, even top cover. I make sure sits straight, gas block, and front sight. A lot of people think they'll look down and something will be crooked, and they'll go, oh, geez, front sight block's crooked. or gas block's crooked. And that's not the case. A lot of times I found, in my case, and I don't know if it's just luck of the draw or whatever, but a lot of mine that were off over the years would be the rear sight block. And I think a lot of guys fail to look at that. If you look where it intersects with the rear trunnion, there's always like, well, there should be a little bit of space looking down where the sight block comes into the trunnion on each side. A lot of times you look at one side and it's that rear sight block is right up against the trunnion like this, and then the other side will have a little bit of a gap. Why? Because it's leaning all the way over that way. There should be a little bit of gap on both sides, or it should be even to the trunnion on that rear one. God, I feel like Misha. Look, I got a cat in the video. Oh, God. Anybody want a cat? I could. This cat is killing me. I can't take it. Hence the allergies in an RV. I've got a HEPA filter, and the thing is not happy. Thank God it's not ruining the RV or the furniture in here, but throw a blanket down on a couch and he'll walk over and whiz on it. And if any of you know, you can't get that smell out. So I'm single-handedly supporting the U.S. blanket market lately. Yeah, he's ready to be bounced, let me tell you. One more. Last night, there was almost, let's just say, an endangered species, so to speak. So yeah, rear sight block alignment, that's important. Look down and always check that. Make sure it's even, because that's harder to adjust than a front sight block or a gas block. Not that it can't be done, it can, but it's just easier to do the other two, really. If that's off, I've had it where rear sight block's off this way, front sight blocks off the other way, and they even themselves out, and that front sight pin is dead center in the middle. So, you never know what you're going to get. But a lot of times you'll think, well, it looks straight to me. I don't get it. And then, but something's off and you can't quite tell. And I'm sure we've all looked down a barrel of an AK and had it almost play optical illusion on you. Like, is that straight or is it crooked? I can't, my OCD kicks in and I have oh man, I hate it. The minute I get a sense of, something's off, it's like, I might as well just get rid of it, because it'll drive me nuts for years to come. And what? Never seen this before. It says ads will run shortly for some viewers. I'm sorry, guys. Maybe I hit something that allowed something I don't normally do. So whatever it is, I think you can skip them. If not, you'll be back in a second, so don't worry. But anyhow, yeah, I think a lot of guys don't pay attention to that, or might not, or think because it slides in there that it can't be off really, but it can. And that can be that thing that's been throwing you off all these years and you can't figure out why. But yeah, back in the day, man, you could get some Wassers that you look down the barrel and holy moly, but you just don't see that much anymore. I did have an Arsenal once that was off a bit. It was bugging the heck out of me. So I punched the pins out, I straightened everything, and drilled them over and put bigger pins in there. Sometimes you can get away without even having to drill them out or change pins or anything. There's just enough room in there that you can get it straight and you're good to go. Let's talk about more components. So the big thing, like I said, always seemed to be forged trunnions. So what's out there that doesn't have forged trunnions? Not much. Wassers are good to go. Zastava stuff is good to go. Anything out of Russia, whether you're finding an SGL or a Vepr or something like that, of course. So any of the older imports, Hungarian stuff like that, the Visca even. No, if it's got a rear trunnion that's cast, don't worry about it. It's not a big thing. A lot of rear trunnions are cast. That's not a big thing. What's important? Front trunnions, bolts, and carriers, really. That's really about it. I mean, the rest of the stuff, a front sight block can be cast, no big deal. Barrels, do you want chrome line? Yeah, probably. But don't pass up an older Zastava like an OPAP or an older NPAP or even early ZPAPs before they went to that. Unless all you're buying is corrosive Yugo ammo to shoot through it, why worry about it? They're accurate. You're never going to wear one out. I promise you that. My Yugos have more rounds through them than all my other AKs combined. And they're still very, very accurate. So don't worry about that so much. Well, furniture. Anything you're going to get here in the States is going to have 922R compliant parts, right? Got to have X amount of parts in there, 6, I believe. And usually, almost always, it's the furniture, right? They've either replaced it with US polymer or US made wood. So, and then again, unless you're buying a very collectible rifle, you're probably going to change it up a little bit, add some aftermarket stuff. So who really cares? If you're on a budget and you want to buy a rifle that's just good out of the box and solid out of the box, well, furniture may be something you want to think about because you don't want to pay to replace it. Everybody talks about Century balsa wood, like on the Wasser. Used to be like my Wasser came with military furniture, laminate military furniture on it. And that was because back then they were building Wassers with military parts, some new, some used, some whatever. So mine was good to go, no problem. 95% of the polymer furniture that's out there today, whether it's Arsenal or even Century or whoever, is good to go. Once in a while, you'll pick one up and you'll knock on the dock and boy, it's super light and hollow and that kind of thing. Well, maybe you want to change that out. But for the most part, the polymer stuff that's out there is good to go. Guys will talk about heat shields all the time. Well, does the front handguard got a heat shield? Is it important? Yeah, I mean, I guess. Yeah, if you're doing a meltdown video, who cares? You're going to melt it down anyways. Do they get warm? Sure. New guys, if you're going to be shooting AK and shooting it a lot, and you're doing mag dumps and all that, well, it might get warm. You might want to invest in a pair of gloves. I mean, I think most people that shoot AKs seriously on a regular basis, or maybe compete with them, or just like to, burn down a drum here and there, whatever. Do you want a heat shield? Yeah, sure, no problem. If it's wood, it'll insulate well enough. If it's polymer, it'll insulate just fine without one, but it might be a little more comfortable for you with a heat shield. I shoot a lot of foreigns that don't have it, whether it's one of my TDI arms front handguards, the billet aluminum ones, or whether it's a Zenitco or something. They can get pretty goddamn hot, but they also cool down faster. So to me, not a deal breaker one way or the other. Triggers, that's another thing that's always a US made part, usually because of 922R. Now, there's a couple out there that come with a factory trigger and they make up the other parts in other ways, maybe a mag floor plate or something like Zastava does on the Z-Paps. That's a factory Yugoslavian trigger, which, frankly, I guess if I had my choice, I would rather have the factory com block triggers. Why? Uh, People talked about tails mushrooming on bolt carriers all the time. That was 100% caused by the use of U.S. trigger groups in those rifles, namely the Tapco, what were they, G6 or G6, I think? I don't remember. Tapco triggers. Look at any com block trigger, and when it's sitting back, you look at the face of the hammer that contacts the firing pin, and the profile on it's fairly flat. May come up a little bit, but it's flat and back down. Look at any American made trigger, and for some reason they decided we need a huge hump in it, and that's probably because every trigger since the Tapco has been based off the Tapco for the most part. That's what causes, guys will get a new rifle and they rack it back and they ride it forward and it stops and it hangs up. Oh, why is my bolt carrier hanging up? Well, it's because of that big giant hump in the trigger. And yeah, it has, I'm not going to go into it all, but it's got a lot to do with, the semi-auto thing. But there's no reason you need that hump. Get a Romanian factory trigger and put it in your wasser, and you'll be amazed at how much smoother that gun runs. Now, will the reset be as good as something US made, or will the pull be as short and as smooth? I don't know, maybe not, but any of them, let's face it, AKs wear in. The way these guns are manufactured, the parts wear into each other. You're always going to get some wear. You're always going to see things rubbing, and they just get better with age like fine wine. They just do. It's how it is. Triggers wear in to carriers, and carriers, bolts wear into carriers, and lugs, bolts wear into trunnions, and eventually it's all just like a fine sewing machine, right? Back in the day, not so much. They may wear poorly, and that's grinding away on itself and beating itself to death. But yeah, I would always take a military trigger or a factory trigger over a U.S. made group. Now, it's not pounding on all U.S. groups. I can take a Tapco trigger and make it fabulous. There's lots of great triggers out there. Century's got a pretty good trigger now. The rack. Arsenal got a great trigger out there. I tend to like ALGs and pretty much put those in everything. But there's pretty much any American-made trigger now is good to go. What the problem always was with tails mushrooming wasn't that the carriers were bad. They were just fine. They were hardened just fine. It was just that the U.S. hammers were harder. So when that tail came back and slammed into that hammer to push it back, it mushroomed it. Yeah, there's been some that have gotten bad enough that it affected the way the gun ran, but for the most part, it stopped after a while, and that was that. So U.S. trigger, original military trigger, 6 of one, half dozen of another. And to me, that's a feel kind of thing. That's a personal preference. So you may like the rack, or you may like an ALG, or you may love a Tapco, or just how to work your Tapco in, or you may want a com block trigger. You love your Zastava trigger. For years, OPAPs, NPAPs, they all came with Tapcos in them. The majority of guns came with Tapcos in them until this other came along. But all in all, I can't say there's a bad one out there, really. So that's not much of a concern. Furniture, like I said, same thing on US parts. Some people say, well, they changed out the gas rod. What? That's US made, big deal. Uh, that's just an easy part to change out, not have to worry about. And I've never seen one go bad, ever. And yes, the wobble is supposed to be there, although some you see tighter than others. I've had one or two over the years where they were solid. Boom, you know. American made guns, like the PSA, they offer several different barrels. And technically, in my opinion, you get what you pay for. So what would I buy there? Of course, I try to get the FN barrel, but they're all good. None of them bad. Well, the other one will last longer. You're not going to shoot the first one out, so don't worry about it. Get what you can afford. And like I said, I still recommend going with an import. Components other than trunnions, gas blocks, sight blocks, muzzle devices, things like that. 6 of one, half a dozen of another. There's just not much bad out there. So if you're a new guy, I would look at, more than anything, let's say maybe you kicked it around a little bit, hadn't researched it too much, but you walk in a local shop one day and there's an AK sitting there. I would probably look at what and how your plans were to use the rifle. Was it going to be just a range toy that you take out once in a while and put 3 or 4 minutes through it, enjoy yourself, take it home and hang it on the wall? Or do you, what kind of look do you want? Do you want that classic look of blued or painted with the wood furniture, or do you want something maybe a little more modern because your plans are to upgrade or modernize it a bit? Maybe you want to put like an M-LOK handguard on it or something, or maybe you want to add a red dot, or you want to add variable power optic to it. Whatever your plans are, that's going to kind of steer you a little bit. In some cases, almost more than the rifle itself, I would say. You wouldn't want to buy an underfolder if you had plans to put a scope on it or put a red dot on it. Why? Because they're not as easy to put one on. When you have an underfolder, they don't have side mounts because of the way the stock folds. So that's something to keep in mind. If you want to put optics on it, you probably want a side mount. Now, there's other ways to do it. Of course, there's always a way around it. Even for the underfolders, there is. But I'm talking ease of doing it. The easiest way is to get a side mount, scope mount, or optic mount. And we can get into which ones of those work better than others. There's a few good ones out there. One in particular that stands out above the rest, but there's other ways too. But the easiest way is if there's a scope mount on the rifle from the factory. That's the easiest way, because you just go get the mount and put on the optic without having to change other stuff up. So if you're wanting to put an optic on, probably stay away from a side folder. What would I look at? Well, just about anything from there. A Wasser has a side mount. Z-Paps have side mounts. N-Paps, old O-Paps, just about every Arsenal, unless it doesn't have an R in the name, like a 107 FR. The R It stands for rail. F stands for FR, folding with rail. And there were just Fs without rails, believe it or not. There are different rail systems. Yugo rails are different than any other system out there. Just about every other side rail will work with normal mounts. So Bulgarian, Russian, Romanian, everything else out there. PSAs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, will all work with a normal side mount. There are a couple of rare exceptions here and there, like a Vepper folder needs a different mount, just because of the way the room you have to get it on and off. Or maybe my Arsenal crank that has a special mount because of where the rear sight is on the dust cover. So depending what you want to do, that's going to change maybe whether you buy a certain rifle or not. If you want to make it tactical, used to be, I would recommend an AKM pattern, because you could put any furniture, any accessory, top covers, hand guards, pistol grips, on and on and on and on, would fit on an AKM. Just about everything out there accessory-wise was made to fit an AKM. And Yugos didn't have anywhere near the selection there is today. But today you can get anything you can get for an AKM to fit a Yugo. Vepers are a little different, but with the prices Vepers are running at today, who's going to change one up? That might be something else you want to look at if you're a first-time buyer. If you're a first-time buyer and you want to go out and shoot it, do you want to buy a super collectible rifle if you want to change it up? Maybe you don't care and you want to take a $4,500 Vepper and throw a bunch of different stuff on it and, I don't know, change the top cover out and all kinds of stuff. Maybe you don't care. But for the most part, why bother? Why spend all that extra collectible money on a gun you just want to shoot? Go get yourself a Wasser, get yourself a Z-Pap, get yourself an Arsenal. Get yourself a PSA, something like that. But again, I always go back to the import rifles. What do we have for import rifles today? Well, there's Arsenals out there. There's a lot of Cougar stuff out there. There's a lot of 5.56 guns. What caliber do you want? Do you want, if you're a first-time buyer, I'm thinking you probably want to get the classic, right? 7.62 by 39. However, things in the market have changed, right? We don't have import ammo anymore out of Russia. All that cheap ammo that was coming in is now 3 and 4 times the price it was. So maybe, although you always wanted a classic AK and 7.62, maybe you go, well, I still want to shoot an AK pattern gun, but 5.56 223 makes a lot more sense. So I'm going to go with this. Maybe you want to buy an M90 or something, or a Yugo, or you want to buy a Sam 5, or the new Wasser 3 coming back out in 5.6. Maybe you want to do that. But while ammo may be cheap and around forever, you now start running into mag issues. Mags are more expensive on 5.56 guns. 7.62 mags are everywhere, right? Whether they're military, steel, polymer, aftermarket, pro mag, whatever junk, whatever you want to put in it. They're cheap and they're everywhere, but 5.56, not so much. And that new Wasser, unfortunately, at least according to Misha and a few other reports, a lot doesn't fit in there. Really, you're pretty much left with proprietary I hate to say proprietary because it is and it isn't, but you're stuck with the Romanian mags, really. I'm trying to think. I think you got one other one to fit, but not much else did. Even Galil mags didn't fit. So maybe that's contention, you know. Maybe 7.62 mags being more plentiful and around. Maybe it makes sense to get a 7.62 gun still. Don't get me wrong, there's still tons of ammo out there. It's just a little more. And there's other sources coming out all the time. I see different manufacturers and stuff that I haven't seen before or rarely saw. There's more around now. I think with what's going on over in Europe and this Serbian ban on export of Serbian stuff, I'd maybe grab one of those if I'm a first-time buyer. I'd try and get my hands on a Z-PAP or something. Might not be your first choice, but hey, if you like the pattern enough and you're going to buy more, you're eventually going to want one of those and you might not be able to get it. That's a whole nother video, right, guys? I mean, think about what we've had over the years. How many different countries, manufacturers, all this that we had that are now gone and gone forever. It seems that when they go away, and usually when they go away, it's some sort of ban or some sort of sanction, and they just don't come back. I keeping my fingers crossed come back. I keeping my fingers crossed on Zastava. And who knows? I've heard rumors of a U.S. component to it as well. That there's some people in the Serbian government, I guess, that the U.S. Is accusing of certain things that, who knows, may bring a sanction if it hasn't already. But what was originally reported, and I believe what is still out there, is that it was an export ban from the Serbian government because of the threat they're feeling, that they want to stockpile as many and as much arms as they can. So originally it was 7 days. Who knows? Hopefully it's temporary and it's nothing and keep coming. Seems like, the longest two being imported over the years are Romanian stuff out of Kuzer and Zastava, right? Those have been the standbys forever. Now you've got Arsenal stuff, Bulgarian stuff. Not that that was ever a problem, but supply with them tends to wax and wane on some stuff. When it always seemed like there was always a supply of something out of Zastava and always Wassers. Although for a few years there, Wassers seemed a little thin. I don't know. And it seems like Century was putting more and more of their efforts toward their own rifle, and especially the Visca. I see those things everywhere, the Visca. And I got to wonder why Zastava terminated their import agreement with Century, whether it was somehow done because Zastava maybe felt that Century didn't have their best interests at heart, that they were pushing their own stuff or even Romanian stuff above them. And they said, hey, we can do this and make more money, and created Zastava USA. And maybe it's Century pushing their own stuff, higher margins, Depending how the dollar's doing and importing and all that. Let's face it, importing is a hassle, although Century's been doing it forever and they've been dealing with Romania forever, so it's probably fairly easy for them. But for a long time, there used to be all kinds of different platforms out of Cougar, and that Century was bringing in, from RPKs to the Wasser to all kinds of stuff. I mean, down to the Dracos and minis and micros and all that stuff. And minis, micros, and Dracos have always kind of waxed and waned, supply and be all over one for a while, and then all of a sudden there's another supply. They all tend to do that somewhat, but certain manufacturers are more consistent than others. Zastava seems to come to mind. You've got Poland that and heavy for a year or two. It's been longer than that now, but you've got great stuff coming in from over there. So there's some other stuff you can get your hands on, and all of it perfectly fine. There's some Pioneer stuff out there that maybe not, but other than that, all of it's good, all of it. And then, of course, you've got what some may or may not consider an AK, but IWI with their Ace, first generation Aces, lots of money now, but nothing wrong with Gen 2. Super, super nice rifle. I have a pistol version Ace that I love. I got the opportunity. I met some Bulgarian guys at my local range. Met one guy, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago, and I ran into him with a couple other buddies a few months later, and I had some AKs there, and they started talking to me, and the next time they were there, you had another buddy, and they were all from Bulgaria, served in the Bulgarian army. And it was funny because here I am shooting their issued service rifle. And what are they shooting? Our issued service rifle. They're shooting ARs, and I'm shooting their Bulgarian AKs. And the one guy asked me, he says, "Can I ask you something?" I said, "Sure." He's got a heavy accent. He says, "What is with you Americans being so enthralled with that junk?" That's what he said. And I said, "Well, why are you so enthralled with that dime a dozen platform that you're shooting over there?" He says, "You have no idea what a magnificent weapon you have." I said, "Oh, no, I have a good idea. It's just that we always want what we can't have, right? Or it's just different, and we enjoy it, and we collect it." But he loves his AR and his AR platforms, absolutely loves them. And he talked about how smooth and how wonderful, and if something happens, I just slap their part in. And at the end of the day, he says, "I'm joking about the AK platform." He goes, "It's got a spot in my heart." And he went in, and that was what he served with and everything. So he likes them. He has a good respect for them, but he's here now and loves shooting the AR. Anyhow, he had a 7.62 Ace Gen 2, and he said, "Here, you want to shoot it?" I said, "Yeah, sure." And he had a I think it was pretty much all stock other than a red dot. And I'm trying to remember if he had put a different handguard on it. But, oh my God, what a wonderful rifle. This was a 16-inch barrel. Just a wonderful rifle. I mean, from recoil to trigger to everything. And I said, when I shot that, I said, "Gotta get one. Gotta get one." And it's another fabulous rifle. Is it a true AK? Not really. But It's kind of a modernized, in many ways made better ergonomically and all, AK. That's what it is. So if that's close enough to the pattern for you, that's something you may want to consider. They are fabulous, really, really nice. And you can get them in 545, you can get them in 223, you can get them in 762. But if you're a purist and you want the paint and wood, well, you got to look elsewhere. First time, like I said, it's a stop. Hopefully they keep coming in. Hopefully you can find one. I'm sure the prices have jumped up already if you can find one. Arsenal's Arsenal. They're a little more money. Some people say not worth it. I don't know. I love my Arsenal guns. It's hard for me to say that a 107 FR is not my favorite rifle. I just love them. I think they're great rifles. I really do. One of my favorites. And I like them set up differently even. I've got one that is iron sights, fastest, quick pointing, best shooting iron sighted AK I have. And I may put a red dot on it, but I love it. I just love it. Then I've got the FR that's my Krebs gun, which, I mean, hands down, fabulous, fabulous gun. But I just love that pattern. Maybe you're a milled person and you want a SAM. Plenty of those around. Great rifle, lasts you forever. Milled receiver, great trigger from the factory, good polymer from the factory. Maybe you want a fixed stock, a folder, great barrels. Comes with all the good stuff, Bayo lugs and muzzle brake and threaded for your pleasure and all that good stuff. Hard to beat. Hard to beat. Not going to wear one out. Bring up, well, whether it was an OPAP or whether it was a Century built M70 AB2 or whatever. First thing I'd hear, well, why do you want to shoot that so heavy? And ounces equal pounds and pounds equal pain, and piss off. Yeah, it's a heavier barrel. Yeah, it's a little bigger trunnion. Yeah, it's a few ounces. Who cares? That gun is a tank, an absolute tank that you will never be able to hurt. So don't let them get on you about the weight. And I'd say the same thing if you like Vepers. Unfortunately, another ban or sanction, we can't get Vepers anymore. Probably one of the top 3 AKs ever imported into this country. Fabulous quality. If you've not, that's another thing. If you've, and Russian guns now are premium and collectible because you can't get them. What's here is here, and if you ask me, they're never coming back. So whether it's or I will tell you this. Some will say, well, Bulgarians is good, or this is as good, or whatever, or what's so great about Russian? It doesn't have to be Russian. No, it doesn't. You're right. There's lots of great rifles out there. Some better in ways than the Russian stuff. But until you shoot a Russian gun, a Russian factory gun, my opinion, you ain't shot an AK. Because, and I almost can't put my, gotta think it's somewhere in the manufacturing, the metallurgy, whatever. All these, how little things make big. Like you're building a race car, right? and you grab a little horsepower here and a little horsepower there and some more torque here and a little more here, and you put it all together, and all of a sudden you got this 700 horsepower monster, right? Kind of like that is how I figure with the Russian. It's when I shoot those Veprs, they just feel different. And it's not the weight because of the bulge trunnion or the thicker barrel. It's just everything from the feel to the recoil to the gas system to everything. It just feels a little different in a good way. Are there other rifles as good or make feel better to me in a certain situation? Yeah, but nothing feels like a Russian rifle exactly. It just doesn't. I can't put my finger on it. For the longest time, I thought, well, maybe it's just the mystique in my head or whatever, but it's not. It's shoot an SGL, shoot a Vepr. Although to me, the Vepr, there's very few stamped guns that are as smooth as those Veprs, man. Very few. Just a fabulous gun. So if you can afford one and you can grab one and you want to shoot it, that's a great way to go. Some of the stuff I might stay away from, I think, my opinion, and I'll get bashed here. My opinion, and I'll get bashed here. Certainly not a bad, let's start this. I'm not going to tell you what I'm talking about just yet. But certainly a quality rifle, okay? Certainly will last and great components and all that stuff. But as far as a shooter, it doesn't rank anywhere near the top for me. And that's Chinese rifles. They're the story of they went from junk. Everybody's opinion was junk. Partially it was the time frame of when Chinese stuff was coming in. They were dirt cheap and junk, and everyone considered them that, other than preppers and maybe people that at that time that could afford AK or ARs rather. They went from junk to today, held in high esteem and looked upon as some of the best rifles, AK pattern rifles ever built. And, we tend to want what we can't have, right? And so things go from dime a dozen junk to ultra collectible, fabulous rifles. Like I said, it's not a quality thing. It's not an accuracy thing. It's not good or bad component thing. It's just my opinion of how they run. There's certainly a lot smoother guns out there. There's certainly guns that have a better recoil impulse out there. Just not my favorite. And now for the money they bring, yeah, I mean, think about it. A Mac 90, they're bringing big money now. I mean, if you find a band era gun in a thumbhole stock, I've seen them at $1,200. Matter of fact, Misha did a video on a Mac 90. Is it worth converting it? Meaning, you take a band era Mac 90 that came in with the thumbhole stock, and you find it at a pawn shop, which I actually found one. I was down in Florida, and not at a pawn shop, FFL, with a very small used inventory actually, and I came across Mac 90 in a thumbhole stock. And I wanted to buy something that day. So let me see it. And I'm looking at it. And Misha actually brought up a good point. a lot of people think that you can tell whether it's a straight receiver or a slant cut receiver by kind of looking down the stock on that thumbhole stock. Oh, I think it's straight. I can see. You got to at least loosen the stock and pull it back to see if it's straight or cut. For you new guys, a military pattern AK with a standard butt stock, the back of the receiver is cut straight. There's a few rifles out there, the MAC 90 Chinese rifle being one of them, that some of them, instead of coming straight down at the back, they came down and then angled. And you buy one of those thinking, well, I'll pull the thumbhole stock off and I'll put on a fixed Chinese stock or aftermarket stock or whatever. And they don't fit right because of that angle. Now, there's adapters for them. Another rifle that there's lots of out there before the FM version was the Vepr. When Veprs first started coming in, they all had slant cut receivers, and people made adapters, including Mr. Mark Krebs makes one. Or they welded up the receiver so they could take them. But you buy a MAC 90 and it's got a slant receiver, and now you got to put an adapter on, dick around with all this stuff. Yeah, if it's a straight one, no problem. Change the stock out, throw a grip on it, and you're good to go. Anyhow, this one was sitting there, and this is back a few years, and I think they wanted something like $800, and I thought it a little high. I remember thinking if I could get this for like $600, I'd probably pull the trigger and just set it aside. It could be a project, And I asked him if he knew if it was straight or slant cut, and he says, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "The receivers, it's straight or slant." "Oh, it's straight." I said, "You sure?" Yeah, I'm sure, but I know. Took a look and see if it is in fact that. No, it's consignment gun, this and that. I can't do that. So I passed on it. I didn't even bother negotiating, but bad components or poor workmanship. No, they're put together really well, straight out of military factories for the most part. And Chinese guns are great guns. They'll last you forever. Just in my opinion, I think there's better stuff out there, especially for a first timer. Now, there's always that case where something falls in your lap, right? And it's the deal of the century. Well, by all means, snap it up. But as a first time buyer, you want something you can shoot, take the range, hang on the wall. It looks cool. I would stick to a Zastava or a Wasser or one of the Polish rifles. Those are great rifles, AKM pattern. You could go with a Beryl, Polish Beryl, great rifle. Interesting, different. There's a lot you can do. An arsenal. But money-wise, it's super hard to beat a Wasser or a Zastava. If you don't want to do the import or you can't find one, grab a PSA. For the money, hard to beat. KUSA got some good guns out there. Great stuff. Well put together. Boy, talk about the king of clones. Man, oh man. But yeah, first one, maybe you want to go that way. Maybe you want one and you want it to be super collectible. Well, if I was going to have one AK and I wanted it super collectible, and I wanted kind of the classic pattern. Now I know that, that's different in people's minds. That could be an AKM, it could be a Type 56, it could be a 100 series, it could be whatever, right? But to me, if I were going to have one AK, probably be an SGL. Yep. My point of this whole thing is, guys, it's hard to find a bad one today. So if you find a deal, one that makes sense, one that works for how you want to use it, whether that's changing it up or leaving it stock, keep those things in mind. You know, if you're going to leave it stock, um, or maybe just want to put an optic on it, well, then, you know, lean toward one of those less expensive imports. Um, if you want to get maybe serious about it, maybe want to spend a little more money, maybe look at an Arsenal. But again, imports. If you just want to shoot the crap out of it, want to bang it around and treat it like crap and still have a great rifle that's accurate and everything else, well, go to PSA or a KUSA or whatever. But it is hard to find something that's not going to work and work well for you. And that's with, you've got people like Rob Ski and others to thank for that. Hard to do it. If any of you guys are new in here and you've got some questions as to, you know, what you should buy for what you want to do, throw a question out here. Let's get to the chat real quick. What time is it? I'm going to have to end pretty quick here, guys, because I got an online meeting I got to get to. So I want to jump in and talk to you guys here. Joe Mercado, first one in. Thanks. Appreciate it. He says, welcome back. Chase Kelly, Joe Morgan. Good to see you guys. Ross, 77. What would Koffee and Kalashnikovs be without Ross in here? Rabbit Hole Reviews is here. Good to see him. Stay away from Pioneer. Yes, I mentioned that. The Pioneer stuff has got, there's a few issues out there. 556 8K buddy of mine, Hobo Factory, has had busted frying pan and nonstop issues. Yeah, they kind of claimed a few claims to fame that they shouldn't have claimed. Just Age the Stava M70. Yep, good stuff. Good stuff. It's hard to have one rifle. I get it. Maybe it's not. You just want an example, and you pick one. But man, it's hard. I couldn't have just one. It'd be like having one AR. Although I could do that. I could do one AR, maybe two. But when it comes to AKs, there's just that history and the different patterns, and I don't know. It'd be hard to do. But yeah, Joe is right there on those Pioneers. Although I think they've been pretty good on the other stuff. I learned AK parts fitment is a nightmare between countries. Yeah, I mean, well, certain things can be done. It's sort of hard enough with one country, you know, because you've got parts that are stamped 1, 2, 3, and it's kind of like a small, medium, large as far as the specs go. So one may be a 1, maybe at the low end of the spectrum of the what is within spec, and the other may be at the high end. The 3 and a 2 is in the middle, like right at spec. So you may get a barrel and you need a number 2 trunnion. A number 1's too loose. Maybe you got to knurl the barrel a little when you press it in or whatever. Or maybe your barrel's a little over and a number 2 is just too tight and you need a number 3. And that's how the factory does it, because let's face it, all parts are not made the same. The factory does it because let's face it, all parts are not made the same. There's a little bit of variance in that spec, and a tight trunnion may not fit on a top of spec barrel. So they'll have a box of number 3s, a box of number 2s, a box of number 1s at the factory. And depending what barrel they grab or whatever, that's how it goes. Same with gas blocks and all of that. They all have a number stamped on them, at least at military factories. So that's something you want to pay attention to. Glad I went with the M90 versus SAM5. Yep. But I think they're getting that straightened out too. One of these days I'll get back with that guy from Arsenal and get our stuff taken care of. Should I get yeah, I'll be done when I'm done. So go in there if you have to for now. I got this meeting coming up, guys, so I got to get through this. I have a Fulton would agree to okay more just a couple years. Should I get a 14 National Match or a Tavor 7? Right now, I would grab the M14. The Tavor, not nice. I love them, but like I said, that stuff's not getting any cheaper. Grab one. Went and saw Oppenheimer. It's worth checking out. Okay. That was IOAKs. Yeah, stay away. Stay away at all costs. There's not one good one. Many of my kids have red dots. No need to worry about irons. Yep. However you like to set them up, man. I got somewhat LPVOs, somewhat red dots, somewhat irons. I run them all different ways. Just got an ad. First time I've seen one on a live stream. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. I don't know if I'll get paid on it. Probably not. That being said, guys, there you can always support the channel with the super chat down there, a little $sign. You can donate whatever you want. Goes to the channel. We appreciate it. Let's see. Evening Jets. Who else? Hattori Hanzo, Tex Bullington, Martin Coe. Thank you, guys. All of the State Department against Alexander are ironic because CIA does. Yeah, right? I think it's probably all a crock of crap. But I'm sure they'd love to ban the import of them, you know. They say that the U.S. is shot on ammo. So when the 5.56, yeah, you would think, and they're loaded. The ammo is loaded up everywhere I go. And even powder now is back and tons of primers everywhere. So I don't know how much bullshit that is. No, they're talking small arms too, but yeah, a lot of bombs, mortars, stuff like that. Give the Ruskies credit where do AKs, tanks, chess, and hockey. Yes. Although we beat them in hockey. Too bad. If you hit the fan, most of us are not going to be humping our rifle and ammo long distances. So you're thinking, what? What's wrong? Yeah, I'm done in 2 minutes. Okay, that's called stacking tolerances. Yes, it is. And every factory deals with it. So anyhow, guys, thank you all for stopping in. I appreciate it. We are cutting it a bit short tonight, but I thought it was a good subject to go over and give, a little help to some of the guys that are just getting into this and give them a little advice and a little insight into it. So anybody comes in and sees this, throw your questions in. I will check it over the next few days, answer any questions you may have, and hopefully help you out. But thanks for coming to hang out with us tonight, guys. Something a little different, just a little help video rather than our usual stuff. And we appreciate it. And we will be seeing you soon. Have a good one. And as always, Rockford Ordnance out. Now, what's your fucking